Hello Spurs fans, welcome back to the channel with me Kieran talking all things Tottenham. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the channel. If you enjoy this video, please support it with a like, and you can even turn on the bell notification so you get notified when the next video goes live. So today we're going to discuss the disappointing 2-1 loss to the Emirates Stadium. I mean, let's just jump right into it. And for me as well, it's a bit of a sad time because I've had it quite lucky, really. I set this channel up and it's only been positives. All the games that I've spoken about are games that we've come away with decent results. So this is the first loss that I actually have to talk about. So I'm not too happy about that, but hey-ho, we'll jump right into it. And the only way I can describe this performance really was lackluster. It was just missing a lot that we've been putting out there recently. So we'll talk about the lineup. Lloris in goal, Reguilon and Doherty as fullbacks, Sanchez and Toby retaining their place as our Premier League centre-back partnership. In front of them, Tanguy and Højbjerg, Lucas in that number 10 role with Son on the right, Bale on the left and Harry Kane up top. So in the last video, I spoke about my predicted lineup and what I wanted to see. And I think pretty much every lineup I saw predicted or what the Spurs fans wanted was that lineup, but with Doherty swapping out for Aurier. And as we get into this, we will talk about the reasons for that. I don't want to get into a slagging match about the players and the manager's decisions, but I just feel like, you know, there's a few things we missed and that we could have tweaked to not necessarily guarantee ourselves a win in this game, but certainly help us have a better performance as a team and make things easier. So yeah, that was the lineup, and on the whole, it looks like a pretty decent lineup. It's pretty consistent with what we've had in the last few weeks, and you would expect them to have caused Arsenal problems. However, you know, we couldn't have predicted that Arsenal were going to play exactly the way they did. You know, at the start of this game, they were 10th in the Premier League. They haven't been on the best run of form. They have had defensive frailties. They've struggled to play out from the back. And I think there was almost this bit of naivety going into the game that, you know, we were going to dominate this one, but it's a London derby and things happen. You know, you expect teams to put out bigger performances than what they currently have in the league and what their form represents. And Arsenal have been on a slight rise, and they're coming off that high with their Europa League win, and they didn't have to deal with so much of the tiredness because they did decide to spend the night in Greece. They didn't come back, so the players were well rested, so the journey wouldn't have been as stressful for them. So, you know, they were fairly recharged. If anything, you would think, like in the reverse fixture, that we were the ones that played away because we looked really tired. We just weren't at it. So from the start, I mean, we were really poor. You have to credit Arsenal because their pressing game was on it. Now, pressing is something that I wouldn't say we've been good at in the last few games, but as a team, we've pressed a lot more than we normally would. But I think that's been aided by the fact that, you know, Lucas Moura and Lamela, when he's been on, have done a lot of the pressing work for us. And I think that's distracted from the fact that the rest haven't been putting in quite the shift because the goals, the assists, the nice passing has kind of deflected from that. But yeah, Arsenal got it spot on. They were in our faces from the get-go. And, you know, 15 minutes in and just the worst thing that could have happened to us in this game happened. Sonny pulls up in an injury. And, you know, it just looks like he's pulled a muscle going into that full sprint. And I think this is kind of the problem we saw in the first 15 minutes. We weren't creating much. People weren't willing to make those darting runs. And Son's been really good at them. It gives us space. We weren't really hitting the passes. We were trying to play our way through. So Sonny's tried to force himself into this run. And he's pulled a muscle. These things happen. It's unlucky. He's played a lot of games. His muscles are probably tired. Warm-up may not have been as great. But yeah, pulled up. Disastrous moment, and we're forced to make our first change that early in the game before we've really sort of set the tone of what we wanted to do. A fairly decent substitution with Lamela coming on. Like I've said recently, he's deserved to start and he's been unlucky. The only problem with this is Lamela comes on. Obviously, he has to go into that central position because we're not going to put him out on the left. Moura ends up out there. And as we've seen, Moura he doesn't have his best joy when he's out wide. As I said in the last video, he kind of gets lost because he wants to cut inside, which would have worked if Reguilon was going to overlap him constantly throughout the game. But I just feel like it was a bit meh. It changed the shape a little bit. And Lucas doesn't play out on the left for us, so he hasn't got the same relationship with Harry Kane in that sense. He's not used to making the runs from that side at that angle. Normally when we see him out wide, we see him on the right. Like I've had games playing for my team where in an actual game itself, I started out on the right, and then as the game went on, I had to move over to the left. And it just feels really weird because you get used to playing to a certain way, and to switch, you're on the other foot all the time when you're jockeying and when you're sprinting, and when you have the ball, you're trying to take it out one side, and then when you move to the other, you've got the sideline on the other side of you, and honestly, it messes with your head. It's very strange. But yeah, that's now the new shape. And for me, that moment, it kind of killed the game for us. We hadn't really got into it anyway, but it was just one of them. It stops you in your tracks. And I felt it really hurt us. Arsenal figured us out. Arteta had a very good game plan. I think he knew before the game what his plan was. Obviously, Gareth Bale has been in great form in an attacking sense. He's done little bits of defending here and there, but we've been up against weaker opposition, so it's not like we've had to rely on him to do loads and loads of defending because we've kind of overloaded teams. The problem is you're coming up against Arsenal in a derby. They're not going to give us that kind of time and space. This is a game that they are desperate to win. We're their rivals. They need to keep in good form. And they just attacked that right-hand side. They know that Bale's not going to be able to get up and down the pitch all game. So what actually happened was they attacked down the right, and Bale wasn't tracking his man back, which then meant Doherty was caught between the fullback and a midfielder. So he's got a decision to make. Do you press onto the fullback or do you stick with your man in midfield? It's a really hard thing to do. And I feel sorry for him. Although he didn't have the best game, in terms of one-on-ones, he just wasn't good enough. But I feel sorry for him in the sense that he wasn't really given any support from Bale. And then because of that, Højbjerg was getting dragged out to the right, which then meant Tanguy was left in the centre on his own. And it doesn't matter how good you are. You could be the best defensive midfielder in the world. You could be the most athletic player in the world. You cannot cope in the centre against an attack with Premier League quality players 2-on-1. It's just not going to happen. They will pass their way around you. So you've got them attacking down the right. When Højbjerg goes over, they've then got the option to go back inside with the two central midfielders and just overload us that way. So we were a little bit screwed on all fronts there just because Bale wasn't doing his tracking. And because we weren't attacking well either, it kind of made no sense to me as to why Bale wasn't helping out Doherty more. Now, I do feel had Aurier started, I'm not saying we would have won the game. I'm not saying there would have been a huge difference, but Aurier is used to playing as a right back. Doherty isn't. He's a right wing back. He's not used to having to do all that defending anymore. Aurier at Spurs has had to do both roles. So I feel that in terms of athleticism, he would have offered us a little bit more. And I think of the two, he is the better defender. Yes, he has a mistake in him. Yes, he has the rash challenges. But I think he would have coped with Bale's lack of tracking back a bit better than Doherty. But with the quality Arsenal had there, I mean, Tierney and Smith Rowe were excellent. They would have overloaded at times, but I just don't feel Aurier would have had as many problems because his pace gets him out of trouble a lot more than what it does with Doherty. So I think that's why all Spurs fans wanted to see Aurier start, and it just didn't happen. It caused problems. You have to really give the praise to Arteta and his players because they picked our weakness and rolled with it. And then on the flip side, Jose put the players out there. So Jose needs to understand Doherty shouldn't have been playing. That's a mistake on his part. And then a lot of criticism has to go for Gareth Bale for being lazy and not helping out his fullback. He knows what the Premier League's like. Should have put more in. And if it knackers you out and you've got to come off early, I don't care. You put your all in these games. You run ragged, you run yourself into the ground, you come off knackered, you get replaced. Put your all in, we might win the game. Don't leave your fullback stranded. So, yeah, that was that situation. Sorry for the rant, but very annoyed by that. And also pressing, it only works if everybody is willing to do it. And Arsenal were willing to do it. They were pressing us and made it very difficult. There was no good Lamela and Lucas pressing if the rest of the players aren't going to do that job. Because you can press all you want. They will pass round the two players that are pressing, and for everybody else that isn't, it just leaves players open for Arsenal to play the ball into. So we gave them too much time. We gave them too much space. They were hitting us constantly down that side. You know, the first 45 minutes, it was, you know, for me, the worst 45 minutes I've seen from us in a long time. It just seemed to be there wasn't enough effort from the players. But 33 minutes in, and we score a goal. And this is a difficult one for me because it was an incredible goal. Like, we're not going to take anything away from the individual skill. And it also wasn't a bad team goal. Like, the ball that Bale plays out to Reguilon is really good. The ball comes in, it's then set for Lamela. And Lamela hit such an audacious shot. I mean, we've seen him score the rabona before in the Europa League, and that was an absolute thing of beauty. From the edge of the box into the top corner, it was absolutely incredible. But that was against a very weak opposition. This is against your arch rivals in the Premier League, and you're hitting a rabona in the box. And it wasn't just made difficult because it was a rabona. It's the fact it's a tight space. There's defenders around him. He has to adjust his feet before he does it. He manages to put curve on the ball. He nutmegs Partey into the bottom corner. It was incredible. What a moment. And I thought that would be the moment that we start building. I mean, even Reguilon's reaction, he was by it and had a very good view, and he was like, oh my God, I can't believe it. You know, Lamela had no right to do that. Incredible bit of skill. He is a very skillful player on his day, and he should try these things more. I mean, why not? You're a flair player. Use your flair. Be confident. Go with it. Be that player. You do the hard work off the ball. The guy deserved that goal. He's been very unlucky recently not to contribute in the goal department. He hit the post in the Europa League game after a great bit of individual play. But this goal it didn't turn us around at all. We continued to be poor. You know, and 10 minutes later, there we are, 1-1. And it wasn't even like it was a great shot or anything. I don't get me wrong, Arsenal are playing really well and they deserved a goal. But there you have it, Odegaard, he scores a goal. But, I mean, this was that poor tracking again. Doherty is left stranded once again. And I do feel sorry for him for that. But in this situation, one-on-one, he needed to do better. He needed to either block the cross or do enough to put the player off so there's a poor delivery in. Odegaard doesn't hit a great shot. Unfortunately for us, there is a deflection off of Alderweireld, and that just takes it into the bottom right of the net. If it doesn't hit him, it goes straight to Lloris. He doesn't have to move. The ball is right at him. So for us, it's unlucky that we've conceded the goal because it wasn't a great shot at all. It's a deflection, it's gone in. But we can't complain because Arsenal did deserve the goal. So, you know, we go in at half-time and it's like, we need to turn this game around. We've been absolutely poor. I actually expected that there was going to be changes at half-time. I think a lot of us expected either a reshuffle where maybe Bale goes off or Doherty goes off. I mean, something needed to happen on that side. And I do think that because he went with Doherty, he felt like he couldn't take him off. He needed to stick by his guns. So for me, Bale has to go off. You need somebody to support him. But it also needs to be somebody that can link up with the attack. But no, we come back out. No subs on our part. We actually start the second half a bit more brightly. So Mourinho has obviously had a pop at him in the dressing room and said to him, you need to get your asses into gear. You need to sort this out. This is poor. And they have come out, and that lasted all of 5 minutes. I mean, that's pretty much it. We put effort in for 5 minutes when we come out after conceding just before half-time. And then just went back to playing awful again. But where do you go from here? And eventually, Mourinho decides to make that substitution. 57 minutes, Bale comes off for Sissoko. I mean, like, what are you trying to do? We don't need to defend at this point. We need to press. If you're going to take Bale off, bring on Bergwijn. Like, he hasn't had much game time recently, And fans were getting on his back because when he was playing, you know, they were saying, oh, he doesn't contribute enough in attack. He does. He makes unselfish runs. That takes players with him, created the space for the likes of Kane and Son. He doesn't score goals. Not a problem in a game like this because you need somebody that can do the dog work and get up the pitch. Like, he's good on the ball. He helps link up play. So Sissoko, for me, was the wrong move. And I feel like that was kind of proven because within a few minutes, we ended up having to make another sub. So on 62 minutes, we see Tanguy go off and Dele comes on. So then you've taken a midfielder off that was in a more defensive position and replaced him with Dele. So you took an attacker off for a defending option and then taken a defensive option off and then put an attacking option on. Would it not have just been easier to make the change with Tanguy? I mean, I don't understand it. I know that Sissoko has done very well in the past at helping out with the fullbacks. And that was what it was for. It was to give Doherty that support. But the problem is with Sissoko, in the transition, he's poor. He doesn't offer us anything going forward. So for me, wrong move. And then that forced him to have to make the next move. And I mean, Tanguy wasn't having a great game either. He kind of went missing. I just don't know what it was. Like, were the players really that tired after the Europa League game? Because Arsenal certainly didn't look it after theirs. They played on the same night. And they had to do the travelling in between. We haven't gone anywhere. We stayed in London. It's just so frustrating because I can understand it if we played well and Arsenal played well. Then you can take the defeat a little bit more. But it's the fact that we just weren't really in the game. We weren't pushing ourselves. It's a result that Arsenal deserved. Like, those subs happen and then, you know, a minute later, penalty to Arsenal. And look, there's been a lot of debate over this penalty, whether it should have been, shouldn't been. Like, in my football chat for the football team I play for, there was a lot of people saying, oh, that's a definite penalty. A couple of people like, no. We'll talk about it in a bit. For now, we'll just say, yep, penalty, whatever. Sanchez has gone in to make the block. Hasn't got the ball. Penalty's given. Lacazette steps up and it's a decent penalty. He's taken loads of penalties against Lloris over the years in the French squad. Like, they know each other very well. He puts the ball in the back of the net. It's 2-1. So we've now conceded a goal to a deflection and a penalty. Do we get a reaction from this? No, we still don't get a massive reaction. We're still playing poor. And then we see within, I think it was like 7-8 minutes, Lamela picks up a booking and then picks up another booking and it's a red card. So the player that has been arguably our probably second best player on the pitch, because I actually thought, although Sanchez gave a penalty away, he was our best player on the pitch in terms of what he was given. You know, he hadn't really made any defensive errors. They were all coming from out wide, and that's why the balls were coming in. He hadn't really made a mistake. Lamela was working hard. He got the ball. He was pressing. And as they kept saying, Lamela plays on the edge. And he really does. You'd think that he was all jacked up for the derby game. If you're a neutral that doesn't watch him very often, you would have just thought, oh yeah, that's how you play in a derby. You know, you get in the faces of the opposition and go for it. No, this is Lamela all the time. He plays on the edge in every game. He works hard, he runs, and he's not afraid to put a tackle in. It's not his best attribute, tackling, don't get me wrong. He picks up a lot of bookings, but it is what it is, really. He was on a booking and should know that when you're on a booking, you have to be careful. Whenever you throw your arm out, you are always in danger of picking up a booking. I think that he thought the player was closer to him than they were. So he's just trying to put an arm out to sort of block them off. And they weren't, they were further away. So when he's put his arm up, he's hitting with this part of his arm rather than this. And this part of his arm would have been across the chest if he'd have been where he thought he was. But he was actually a bit further away and he's caught him. And that's it. Once that happens, you kind of take the decision out of the referee's hands. I mean, was the first one a booking? Could have gone either way. But the problem was he was on a yellow card. He's taken a risk by throwing his arms out when he was in control of the ball as well. So that's it. He's then off. We're down to 10 men. And then all of a sudden, we perk up. Too little too late though. I mean, it's been such a poor performance. Arsenal had been great in the first half. They had a good spell in the second half. But when you actually look at it, they were never really in control of that game later in the second half. There would have been chances had we have put our effort in, had we have been pressing them. But we waited till it was too little too late. You know, we had a free kick. Kane hits the post. Sanchez, if he hadn't have slipped when he takes his shot, probably ends up being a goal. But unfortunately, he slips and it goes right where we don't want it to. It's a blocked shot. So it wasn't our day in that aspect. And then Harry Kane scores a goal, ruled out for offside. It's just one of them where, you know, things weren't going our way. And we didn't deserve them to go our way. We just hadn't played well enough. And I also would like to say, Harry Kane for me went missing in that game, probably because of what happened to him against Zagreb. You know, he got that knock on the knee, he had the ice on, and Jose said there is no chance he's not going to play this game. You know, it'd have to be a lot more to keep him out of it. Yeah, that's true, but look at the Harry Kane we ended up having in that performance. That wasn't the Harry Kane we used to fight in when he's fully fit, but he has hit full flow in the last few games. And then today he was quiet, which tells me that injury was bothering him more than it was. I reckon he had like a bit of a bruised knee, maybe some bruising underneath the skin. And every time he went to make a run, every time he went in for a tackle, that would have hurt. And I think that affected his performance, not just physically, but mentally. And this is why I say, when we're in control of a game, like in the Europa League, when he scored that second goal, he should have come off. Had he come off, he wouldn't have picked up the knock. And we might have seen a different Harry Kane today. And I think the same goes for Tanguy. He was absolutely kicked the crap out of in that game against Zagreb. And I think that may have affected him. Like, I don't know for sure, but he took a lot of whacks in that game. And those sort of things, unfortunately, the niggles, they affect you in the next game. It's not like they've got a week to recover like we have in Sunday League. We have the whole week to recover. We can go easy in training, you know, the once a week that we train. These guys can't. They still have to train before the games. They haven't got time to recover from these injuries. So I think that affected them. But yeah, we left it too little too late. And we did pile the pressure on them. And, you know, Jose said we deserved to get a point because of the pressure we put on in the last 20 minutes. That's not enough. You have to play for 90 minutes in the Premier League. So, no, we didn't deserve it. And that, honestly, that was the game. But if we look at some stats now, when you look at possession, Arsenal obviously in the first half absolutely dominated. They were somewhere near like the 70% mark. When the game had finished, it was only 52% to them, 47. It was 52.6 to them and 47.4 for us. So we actually clawed our way back to a decent chunk of possession. And as I say, like Arsenal never really controlled the game. They dominated parts. They attacked us in the areas that they needed to. But you never felt like they were fully in control of the game. And there was always that chance that we could score. I mean, like the Lamela goal. We didn't deserve to score. We weren't playing well. But we hit them. And our quality was enough to get us through. You know, we had better duel success rate than them. 55% to their 45. We won 67.6% of the aerial duels. Well, if we look at the attack. So they took 13 shots and they only had 3 on target. I mean, that says it all. They scored a deflected goal and a penalty. So they would have been 2 of their shots that were on target. We blocked 2. But although they created these chances, yes, they hit the woodwork twice. We hit the woodwork as well. But if you take away the deflection and a penalty, do Arsenal win the game? I'm not convinced they do, but I'm not convinced that we win either. I'm not saying with like Aurier on instead of Doherty and Bergwijn on instead of Bale and Kane going off early in that game and him fitter. I'm not saying we win because there is no taking away from the fact that Arsenal were the better team and deserved to win. But deserving to win and winning are 2 different things. So if you take away the deflected shot and the penalty, I'm not convinced they score because they are quite wasteful with their shots. Like a lot of them were off target. If you think about that, of 13 shots, only 3 were on target. That means 10 of them didn't make it to the goal. I mean, what? 2 of them were blocked. So the other 8 were off target. So if you look at that, Arsenal were wasteful. We had 6 shots all game, and only 3 of them were on target. They did block one of our shots. I mean, we had 2 shots from outside the box, and it is worth noting that of Arsenal's shots, the 13 of them, 7 of them were from outside the box. So they weren't clear-cut chances. That was just players like coming on and having a shot. They weren't chances that you can expect to score. So if you take away those 2 goals that they scored, they didn't really offer much in terms of chances created. They just got themselves into lots of positions where they should have created chances. So from an attacking sense, they weren't the complete package. You know, their final ball and their shots, it wasn't the best. They were just getting themselves into good areas to create an attack. And that was down to us allowing them in and not working as a team. They played very, very well, and Arteta exposed our areas of weakness. So yes, they deserved to win, as I said, but I don't think that they score goals if there's no deflection and they don't get the penalty. So if we look at disciplinary, we and Arsenal concede a lot of fouls. It was 12 they conceded, we conceded 14. We are both good teams at drawing fouls from opposition. And I did say in the last video, like the pre-match, that it was 4.2 cards per game. You know, the third dirtiest fixture. And in this game, there was 2 yellow cards for us and a red card, and they had a yellow card. But actually, there's more yellow cards because you got to remember Lamela's wasn't a straight red. That was 2 yellows. So it's actually 3 yellows there for us. So that is 4 yellow cards in the game. So it lived up to it. But yeah, really, that was the game. It was very disappointing from our side. For Arsenal fans, they'll be happy because they put a lot of work in. I don't think they'll be too happy in terms of chances created, but they'll be happy with the way the team committed themselves. They played out better from the back than they normally do. So they were less shaky in a defensive sense. Arteta's tactics are starting to pay off. He read it really well, got it spot on. And Smith Rowe was absolutely fantastic. I think he got man of the match, and it was absolutely deserved. Tierney was fantastic. And I did say before the game, Partey hadn't really hit form. And people tend to, when they're on a bad run in these derbies, have a decent game. And I thought Partey played very, very well. You know, we just didn't do enough to stop him on the day. And we can't complain that we lost at all. We cannot complain. So let's move on to what the manager said. Arteta said that they're full credit for the way we've done it today after 2 days coming back from Europe. It's incredible. Going 1-0 down, the way we were playing was disappointing and worst case scenario against a team like Spurs. But we kept playing and deserved the win. He then said, last 10 minutes we did not manage the game and we need to improve as a team. We relied on luck. With the way we played, we should have seen it out comfortably. And yes, they should. They did let us back in there at the end, and with 10 men. Like, you know, they kind of sat back like we were for the majority of the game. He said, we prepare the game trying to exploit areas. We had some really strong performances today. You could see the energy that they were playing with. You know, they did expose it. They exposed Bale and Doherty. They knew Bale wasn't going to get up and down. They knew Doherty is the weaker of our defenders with one-on-one when he's up against quicker players. So spot on from him there. And he said it's about how you react. The team have the reaction in them to not give up. We kept playing and generating chances and got reward. We played quite well in the previous derbies, but they are so efficient. They don't need much to score. You see with Lamela today a quality goal. And he's absolutely right. He got his tactics spot on. Arsenal did fight to get their way back in it. They kept plugging away with their plan, and it eventually paid off. But yeah, they did sit back in the second half like we did against them in the first half, and we almost got reward out of it. Jose, his interview was quite interesting. He was like, no post-match interviews for referees? That's a pity. We played really bad in the first half. So I'm glad he acknowledged that we were terrible, because we really were. And had he come out and defended anything, I think we all would have been pretty annoyed. He then said, the 1-1 was not a fair reflection of the first half. We were poor, defending bad, no intensity or pressing, some important players hiding, really bad. In the second half, we only had space to improve, which we did, and then it is a question, but an impossible one, as they don't speak. For the referee, Mikel Oliver, to answer, probably Paul Tierney too, as he was VAR. According to Kevin Friend, the referee told him he had a clear decision and the VAR does not want to go against. The game was under control in the second half, so we recovered. We made changes to try and win, and then it is a penalty, and after that, a second yellow for Lamela. It means the last 20 minutes, 11v10, the team tried to get the result. What I see from the bench is just a feeling at first. I am 40-50 metres away. I saw it on the iPad, straight after it was given. Referees have a difficult job sometimes. I did not complain, but when I watched it back on the iPad, it is what it is. If somebody has a different opinion, it has to be one of the big Arsenal fans with a season ticket. It is the only one I accept, as it is the passion speaking. Other than that, I don't accept a different view, as it is obvious. If the players don't do better, it's because they can't do better. I belong to the team, so I am guilty for the first half as the players. But the best thing is we improve in the second half. Players get tired, coaches get tired, maybe referees get tired too. My record with Mikel Oliver on penalties with Chelsea, United and Tottenham is unlucky. Now that was a complete dig at him, saying that when he's refereeing games, there tends to be a lot of penalties against his teams. So yeah, with the penalty, it was given. Jose then watched it back on the iPad and he was furious. And then on Sky Sports, they do this ref watch section. I don't know if you've all seen it, but it's worth a watch. Dermot Gallagher comes on and he discusses all the decisions that have happened over the games and expresses whether they are right or not. So, if we have a look at what he said, no penalty. And you're thinking, so why was it given? Well, he said, Mikel Oliver is behind play. He sees Sanchez with a high boot. He doesn't see Lacazette make the air shot. He thinks Sanchez connects with Lacazette and gives the penalty. So he blows, gives the penalty. And we know those decisions, they then go to VAR. So when they go over to VAR, Mikel Oliver will then explain what he has seen to VAR. So what I've just read out, he would have then relayed to them. And at that point, it backs Paul Tierney into a corner because they are not allowed to re-referee the game. Dermot admitted that there is a glitch in the process and Tottenham are very, very unlucky. Lacazette himself in his interview admits that he was lucky to get the penalty. So, when we talk about VAR, they get involved with certain things, but if you look at it, their involvement and encouragement to overturn a decision has to be if there is a clear and obvious error. Now, to me and you sitting here, when we watch the replay, well, most of us that have got common sense can see Lacazette has hit a shot, not a very good one, and his momentum takes him into Sanchez, which Gallagher said as well. Lacazette's momentum takes him into Sanchez. Now, a lot of people were saying it was a rash challenge. You can look at that two different ways. If Lacazette makes contact with the ball properly and it's a shot on target, it looks to me like Sanchez has done his job well. He's trying to read the shot because he's a defender. That's what he's paid to do, read the situation. He's jumped across with his boot in the air, expecting Lacazette to connect with that. And he may make a block on the ball. And then we're all saying, wow, what a block. Well done, Sanchez. And the one thing Sanchez has been great at this season is blocks. He comes out, he throws himself into challenges and makes important blocks. Had this shot been on target, we could be coming away saying, great block. But instead, people are saying, oh, it was rash of him to do it, blah, 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 blah. It's a penalty. So when you look at it, you have an ex-referee there, a very good referee, may I add, saying that that is not a penalty. Now, this is my problem with VAR. They then don't say to the referee, look, you've got it wrong. We advise you go and have a look at it. And if he has a look at it, it should be overturned. But the problem is, and I think the glitch that Dermot is talking about is, the referee has seen it from his angle, and there is no question from Michael Oliver's angle, it looks like a penalty. Even when I first saw it, as a Tottenham fan, I thought penalty. And this is the problem. He sees it from that angle, and it is impossible to say that there was a clear and obvious error because he's explained what he saw. And when we look at it from his angle, we cannot say for sure whether it was a penalty or not. So therefore, Michael Oliver's decision is not a clear and obvious mistake. My problem with the rule, and clearly Dermot's problem with the ruling, is that we've paid millions of pounds to bring this awesome technology in, and we're not getting the right results. And I don't understand. Are we just doing this to protect referees? Because Michael Oliver thinks it's a penalty. If he goes to the screen and sees all the angles, yes, from his angle it looks like a penalty, but from the actual screen, we can see no chance was that a penalty. I'm not then going to turn around to Michael Oliver and go, look, you got it wrong, you're a bad referee. I understand that from his angle it looks like a penalty. But why pay millions of pounds to have this technology to only overturn some of the decisions, right? I think if VAR can prove on those big decisions, I'm not asking them to nitpick everything. I'm just talking about offsides, penalties, goals, red cards, and things like that. The big decisions. I don't care about challenges like further up the field and stuff like that. I'm just talking about these decisions. If it is a decision that could cost a team their place in the Premier League, their chance of qualifying for the Champions League, and things like that, they're just too costly. They have the technology. They can prove it's not a penalty. So don't worry about going, oh yeah, but from his angle, that's what he saw. It doesn't matter what he saw. It wasn't a penalty. So it shouldn't be a penalty. There should be none of this whole referee's pride thing and blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to think he's a referee. If he has the balls to go over to the screen and Paul Tierney as the VAR referee has the balls to say to him, look, from your angle, yes, it looks like a penalty, but looking at it from the other angles, it's not a penalty. Go and have a look at it. Let me know what you think. He should go over to the screen, look at it and go, yep, looked like a penalty from there, but now I can see it's not a penalty and I'm going to change my decision. I'm not going to look at him at less of a referee. In fact, I'm going to praise him as a referee for going and looking at it and being like, look, it wasn't a penalty. I'm not going to say it was a mistake that he gave the penalty because it looked like it. And without VAR, he would have given a penalty. Back in the day, that would have been. But you can't have VAR in there if it's only going to help out sometimes and not others. And, that penalty may or may not have changed the game completely in terms of the result. We don't know what the result would have been. But the fact is, in that moment, it has led Arsenal on to scoring another goal. They go on to win the game. And, these are the fine margins in football. If we don't finish in the top four, anything could happen. Jose Mourinho could lose his job. Harry Kane, Son, Hugo Lloris, players like that could turn around and go, look, we've just done a season without Champions League football. We stuck around. And now we've got to face another season without it. These are players that are too good to not be playing Champions League football. And that leads them to leave. So if come the end of the season we miss out on top four by 1 point that we could have picked up if it was a draw, we'll go with that. It could have been a draw. Because I'm not going to say that we would have gone on to score another goal, and I'm not going to say that they wouldn't have scored more. But if we miss out by a point, and that game would have stayed 1-1, you can trace it back to things like these. Had that decision been right, we qualify for the Champions League. It's those fine margins that when we've got the technology, we should use it properly. We should overturn decisions if they're wrong. I don't care what the angles are. Overturn it, because you're playing with a lot of things here. It's a lot of money to these teams. And especially in a pandemic when, teams have really been struggling without the fans in the stadiums. It's cost them a lot of money, and these fine margins stop teams from being able to get the players they need. They make players want to leave to go to other clubs. And I'm sure Arsenal fans, if any of you are watching this video as well, you would agree if the shoe was on the other foot and we'd have got a penalty the same way you had, you'd accept, yes, from the referee's angle, he sees it as a penalty. And without VAR, you accept the decision as just human error. But with VAR, I think every fan up and down the country would agree, if this happens to your team and, you finish lower than where you feel you should by that point that potential game cost you, you'll be pretty peed off as well. But as I said, there's no taking away from the game. Arsenal were much the better team. So I've got a few little talking points, actually, about Tottenham in general. And one of them, Jamie Redknapp, he was saying that he feels Tottenham tried to play out from the back, but he doesn't feel like they know how. And for me, I actually have to agree with him. I feel like we do try and play out from the back, but we don't do it in a clever way. We're the sort of team we will keep, we don't really try and build from the back. We just sort of pass around between our defenders, and then we'll either try to find the gap, and if we can't find it, we then go long. It's just a case of, we give the ball to Tanguy, and he either goes on a little run and ducks in and out of people, or we hit a long ball, or we get lucky with a run that Son's made. Yeah, so I think he's right on that one. We're not great at playing out from the back. Our best thing actually is the counter-attack. That's when we're at our most effective, with a quick break from like a blocked shot that comes out the box, or Lloris distributes quickly after a save, or a long ball from, anyone where someone's running up the pitch. That's when we're at our most effective. And also, we really, really struggle to win when we play after other teams around us have dropped points. There was a decent chunk of dropped points around us that really could have helped us if we'd have got this victory. If we'd have won this game, we would have gone 2 points. Well, it would have been 3 points because Chelsea got a draw. We'd have been 3 points off Chelsea with a game in hand. We win that game in hand. We're level on points, but we're above them on goal difference. That's how important these games are. And the players just, I don't know what it is, but it seems to be every time with the title races we've had. And, we want to get into these positions. Last season with the top four, we failed to get into it. And it was one of them where we had so many chances to do it, where we played later in the day, or, we played on the Sunday, teams around us had dropped points, and we've got a great chance to do it. And we just don't. We fail to win. Time and time again. And it's getting really frustrating now, because all of us Spurs fans, we get really annoyed when we hear the term Spursy. But I can't deny that we're not, because we are. The evidence is there. Every time we have a chance to put ourselves back in the race, we don't. And you can say that about the other teams as well, because they're dropping points. But the difference is, we're playing after these teams, and I think the pressure kind of gets to us. But in this game, we were just anonymous. Also, the other worry this season is that we're struggling against teams in the top half of the table. Like I said before the Burnley game, that we hadn't beaten anyone that had averaged above 15th on the day of the game, which is really worrying. But yeah, we're really struggling against teams in the top 10. I don't know if it's tactics or the players just aren't up for it. But that's what it is. I've seen a lot of Spurs fans doing the whole, Jose out every time we lose. In fact, there was a Spurs fan on one of the Facebook groups that sat there and moaned and said that it's disgraceful that we lost a derby game and whatnot. Like, get off your high horse, Tottenham fans. Don't be so fickle. And there's fickle fans in every club, and there's some real great fans as well. But when did we earn the right to say that we should be beating Arsenal every time we play them? Like, for years and years and years, they were a much better team than us. We were a sort of like mid-table to 14th place, run-of-the-mill club that played nice football but never really achieved anything. I mean, we've got a decent amount of cups over the years, but Nothing in a long time. Like 2008, do you know what I mean? It's been a long time. And we can't sit there and have the audacity to say that we should be beating Arsenal. Don't get me wrong, Arsenal are still a good team. They're just in a sticky patch, and they've got a great manager now who I think is just going to take them further and further up the table when he finally gets a fully settled squad and buys the players that he wants. Now, this can take several transfer windows. And the same with Jose. I don't want people saying Jose out. This season, I mean, obviously Chris Wilder's gone from Sheffield United, which you expect is a relegation battle, and they're not going to get out of it with him as the manager. Things aren't going well, you have to change. But for these other clubs that are sort of tiptoeing around the European places mid-table, to sack a manager this season, I think is ridiculous. It's a pandemic. Everybody's had up and down form. Like, who thought West Ham would have been playing around in the top four? Like, no one. Would they have done that had we not in a pandemic? We're never going to know. But the fact is, it's an up and down season. Everybody's having mixed form. You stand by your managers. It takes time to build. The fact is, it takes several transfer windows to get the players out that they don't want and new players in. And this has been a strange financial climate. A lot of high-profile, high-money transfers wouldn't have been happening for a lot of clubs in the summer. And certainly in January, we saw very, very, very little transfer activity. It's just too difficult at the moment. So all you people that are saying Jose out, just leave it for now. We'll see where we are at the end of the season. I'm sure Daniel Levy will reevaluate things. We'll have an opportunity to dip into the transfer market. But obviously, if we don't finish in a Champions League spot, we will find it more difficult to get the quality we need. But it will give us a chance to get some of the deadwood out of the club. So when you actually have a look at it as a whole game, we didn't play well. We didn't deserve to win. But I would say from the game, Sanchez played well. Regardless of the red card, I think Lamela played really well. Lucas Moura had a fairly decent game, but apart from that, I'm not going to sit there and say Doherty's useless. And there are a lot of fans out there really hating on him. And the same was with Bergwijn when he missed those couple of chances against Liverpool. Get off the players' back. It's not Doherty's fault that we bought him and we're asking him to play a different role than what he's used to. He is a good player. We're just not playing him in his best position. And certainly in front of him, Bale did not do the job to support him. And as Jose said, in that first half, they're all to blame, himself included. There was a lot of mistakes today. Obviously, I said, Jose shouldn't have put Doherty out there without proper protection. That was his decision. So we went wrong with that. But Doherty wasn't good enough with his one-on-ones. Bale wasn't particularly great. He wasn't getting back. He wasn't really creating anything going forward. I'm not really going to blame Toby and Sanchez for too much, or Hugo, because, the things that led Arsenal to their goals didn't really come from them. It wasn't coming through the centre, it was coming from wide. And mainly on the right. Reguilon was okay, didn't have a great game. But, Tanguy was quiet. Højbjerg, I'm not going to blame too much because he kept getting drawn out wide to help Doherty in that first half. So for him, I think it was kind of out of his hands. Kane just wasn't at it, and I personally think it was because of what happened Thursday, which again is poor management from Jose not to take him off. Who else? Son, we can't say anything about him because obviously he went off injured. And that for us, it changed the way we play completely because nobody replicates what he does. But all round, there was many, many poor performances and a bit of poor decision making from the manager. The substitutions were a bit strange considering how we were playing. After obviously the Lamela one, that was Jose didn't really have a choice there with who he was going to put on. But the substitutions after that, they were strange. They didn't help us, and it is what it is. And I don't think we should read too much into anything because we're not going to win all of our games. We've been on a good run. We've won 5 games on the bounce. We've scored a lot of goals in that time as well. We go again Thursday. But another thing that I don't want fans to get on Jose's back about negative tactics when he plays against these bigger clubs saying, he makes them sit back in a low block. I urge any of you, when you're watching these games, don't watch the version with the crowd noises. Because when you do that, you're missing out on all this other stuff that goes on. Now, when you're saying about these poor tactics, the reason why you're saying them is because you have got the fan noise on. You don't hear the managers as much. Now, in that game, Jose and Sacramento constantly were coming out saying press, 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 get out, push, get on them. Jose kept going back to his seat every time that he saw people not running about and playing silly balls, not putting the effort in. Do not for a second think that these are tactics that Jose is sending the players out with. He is asking them to press. So for those of you that haven't, next Spurs game you watch, make sure you're not watching the one with the crowd noises. Do it without. Yes, it's slightly more boring because all you can hear is sort of like the players calling. There's a lot of silent moments in the background, but you will hear Jose and Sacramento telling those players to press. For some reason, they are not listening. They stopped listening to Jose. And if that's the case, we need to reshuffle the pack and just keep the ones that are pressing. So for me, Moura stays, Lamela stays, but the rest of them that aren't pressing, you either tell them to press or get them out the door and put players in that will, because modern football requires you to press. It's played at a much faster pace now, and you have to force these teams into mistakes, and you can only do that by pressing. But yeah, that's it for today. That's my summary of the disappointing game. Hopefully it's a one-off and the players are re-energised for Thursday. I would expect that there's going to be a bit of a shuffled pack. And hopefully, if we fully take control in that game, he takes off key players and rests them. Get on some of the players that need minutes. And we'll go through, go on a run and hopefully win the Europa League. And fingers crossed now, we're just going to have to rely on teams around us to drop points. The game that we've got coming up against Aston Villa, the game in hand, I feel that is a must-win now. We haven't got the hardest run in towards the end of the season, so top 4 is still possible. We're not miles off the pace. We're 6 points off, and we've got a game in hand which takes us 3 points off. All that takes is all of those teams in and around that area to lose one game. If they all drop points again after we've won our game in hand, and we then win that game, we're back in the race. It doesn't take a lot, so don't lose faith yet. It's just we're making it difficult for ourselves. And yes, this was a very poor performance from the majority of the team, but hopefully it's a one-off. And I'm sure Jose will make sure he drills it into them when they analyse the game. But I think there's a lot of players that need to ask themselves questions as to why they were not up for this, especially when Arsenal are sitting in 10th. And we've played very well against them over the recent couple of seasons. But yeah, as I said, that's it. That's the summary. Not loads of positives to talk about. And for me, it's sad because it's the first time I've had to talk about a negative result on here. But anyway, we go again. And as always, come on you Spurs.